Joining us at the breakthrough table, we have theatre students of the Department of Creative and Festival Arts at UWI, Mr. Joshua Lamy-Ramsden and Jovanna Khan. Good morning.
Good morning.
How do you all feel?
Good.
All right, thank you so much for joining.
Yes.
So we're here to talk a little bit about what you all have in store, because we know that the UWI we know that the Department of Creative and Festival Arts is having their Festival of Plays, which we'll show you in a little bit. But I just want to get into y'all a little bit as students, as theatre students. Now, just really quickly, what made you decide to purchase? Because when I made the decision to go into music, I knew my reasons. What made you decide to get into theatre, to study theatre at the university level?
No, me first or ladies first? Ladies, I'll go first. I think I always knew. It started from the age of 4 in St. Peter's Private Primary School when I stepped on stage for the first time in the Christmas concert. You know, it felt like home. I knew that is where I needed to be. This is where I wanted to be. So since that, you know, I just gone with the flow and I've been here.
And now you're at what year are you in?
I'm in my final year. I'm in my final year.
Home stretch.
Home stretch.
All right, now Jovanna, what about you?
Yeah, for me it was secondary school. I think I've always enjoyed literature, storytelling, and well, my school had a drama club, so that was my entry into performance. I enjoy the acting side of it. I love being on stage, so that was my entry into it, and I keep pursuing that to this day, so that's why.
Okay, nice. Now we do it kind of joking on off air. Just before we started, and she said she almost wanted to be a news anchor at some point in time. It's still possible. Listen, it's still possible. But so those things make sense. So describe what the journey has been like. If you go back to when you first entered into UWI, and now you all are where you all are right now. How has the journey been so far? What are some of the things that you've learned? Some of the things that you've learned to do, what not to do, all of those things. Just expand on the journey for me a little bit.
Well, the journey is long. It is a race for the swift, not who could endure.
Okay.
All right? The opposite. It is something you really have to be passionate about. You have to have that passion, that drive, that force, and you have to learn, as we all know in the theatre process, trust the process. Trust the process. So the journey has been a long one, but it's also one full of learning and new experiences. In theatre, you never stop learning. You always have new experiences that teach you different things along the way, different people you interact with, different things. So, you know, you have many lessons you learn throughout. One thing I've learned not to do is be full of yourself, and that's easier. That's something you could say out loud, and you don't really practice it. Is you have to be humble and learn, be willing. You have in the theatre arts domain, you have to imagine yourself as a sponge, just soak up as much as you could. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. What about you? What about you, Jovanna?
I think I could attest to that because I think coming into the degree, is every single area of the creative arts you get to touch, you know, from behind the scenes, on stage, and then our directing process. So it really helps you find what is your niche in the creative arts, and then to what he said is about being humble, is about learning as an artist. I think DCFA is a great place to network while you're there. So I think that's something that I would have taken away from my years being in DCFA so far.
Right. Now you mentioned, Joshua would have mentioned something about trusting the process. Now a lot of people don't know what that might mean, but those of us who have had to, you know, the first couple of times that you have to do it, you're like, oh, how does this work? But then eventually you kind of go. Do you all remember like the first time, Jovanna, do you remember the first time that you had to be like, trust the process?
Yes, I do, and it was in DCFA. I did my certificate in technical theatre, and even from being behind the scenes, you learn to trust the process, you learn to trust your director, and I think trusting the process really means just putting your all in, and when you do that, you know that the results you will get out will be something that people will want to see, and that you will also be proud of, you know? Right.
Do you remember your first time?
The first time I would have to trust the process would have also been in DCFA. Yeah, I've been performing a long while, but in DCFA is where I learned trust the process. For, what was that we did, the Midsummer Night was?
Production
1A and 1B was the first time that I learned trust the process. Those are courses anyway, where you put on the play, but we now work as technical personnel on the play. That was the first time I had to learn trust the process. that for sure was trust the process because things were now in the air, a lot was going on. You just had to rely on yourself and know, once I do what I need to do, trust the process, everything would work out.
Yes, for sure. Because at some point, the process goes on, but within our own minds, our own human minds, we're like, this should be done by this date, this time, that sort of thing, and then it turns out that that's not happening. And then magically, for some strange reason, be it the day before, the night before, or the day of, things just kind of fall into place. Nothing falls apart, right? Things just kind of gently falls into place. And would you all say that the more you fight the process, the worse it becomes for you?
I would say yes. I think when you fight the process, you kind of underestimate yourself a little bit. And being a creative artist, you know you have to be confident in what you are doing. Right. So I think it's, again, trusting the process means putting your all in and knowing that, okay, you did this work, so the expected results. And
just kind of let the rest.
Yeah, let the rest. That is what trusting the process is. Okay. Doing what you have to do and then leaving it to fate.
Okay, letting the rest kind of figure itself out. All right, no problem. So I want to get into it a little bit. So the DCFA, the Theatre Arts Unit, is having their Festival of Plays. All right, and it's going to be on 3 days, Friday the 22nd, Saturday the 23rd, and Sunday the 24th. Right, and we have all of the information there. We have 1 play on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Now, both of y'all have your plays together on the Sunday. We have Her Story, that's at 4 p.m., right? And then we have Play Mass at 6 p.m., all right? So, Joshua, tell us about Her Story without giving too much. Yes. We want people to come.
Yes.
Tell us about it a little bit, or at least.
Her story, what can I say? Her story is just that, her story. Okay. The play surrounds the theme of womanhood.
Okay.
It's a family of predominantly women who live in one yard, and each of the women have their own different societal challenge. Right. So the play explores each societal challenge and how it affects their family life. That's what it really is. While it has music in the play, it is not a musical.
Right.
It's set in modern times in Trinidad and Tobago, and is really a message to women out there in domestic relationships that there is a way out, one. And it's a message to the men in Trinidad and Tobago to step up and do what we need to do as men and really, be a man, you know, so for lack of a better term, be a man, you know, so that's really what her story is about.
Right, and I mean, in theater, you know, it's about telling stories, but the purpose, well, not one of the purposes, but one of the goals is, you know, when stories are shared, and it's someone else's story, they feel like they're not alone. And that's one of the situations, given how real, based on what you described in her story, could be. It allows those who may watch it or those who may hear about it, they know that, okay, this could be happening to somebody else. Because one of the things that keeps us in certain situations is that because we feel alone, right? And I think especially when you go into university, you all would have, you know, felt this at some point when you realize, when you first get into year one, I don't know how it is with the theater department because y'all are loud.
Oh.
But y'all are great. But you come into it in year one, you're watching, everybody's like, okay, all right, cool. And then everybody else seems to have their stuff figured out. And then they're like, oh, I don't. And then when you start talking to people and sharing experiences, they're like, oh, nobody in this class knows what they're doing. Y'all have ever experienced that before?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like, okay, so we're all here to learn. Right, so we have Her Story, that's at 4 p.m., right, on Sunday the 24th. Now, Jovanna, you have Play Mass, right? Now, those two titles juxtaposed together, they sound very opposite, polar opposites. Right. Tell us about Play Mass a little bit.
So, for me, Play Mass is a play that I selected based on the characters. So for me, my connection to the script was the characters. It's about this journey between a tailor and his assistant and where they reach in the future and how their relationship affects Trinidad and Tobago, because it's about post and pre-independence of Trinidad and Tobago, and what I wanted for the play was for the audience to take away a sense of pride and nostalgia of our culture of carnival. And yeah, for me, questions is more important than answers, and I'm going into directing this play with that mindset.
And both of you all are directing?
Yes.
Yes.
Your individual plays?
Yes.
Now, for me, being in a choir on stage and then being a director, it requires knowledge of both, but also you kind of have to exist in two different spaces from time to time. And then you also have to manage people, right? Manage your cast, manage your crew, all of those things. How has that experience been being, is this the first time you all have directed stuff?
No. We had the course before directing one where we got to put on a scene.
Okay.
But this is the first production.
Like, okay, so how's it been?
Everything in life has challenges. However, for me, directing was always never a stress. It's always something I enjoy. I love to direct. The greatest part of directing for me is seeing when a person comes in and they're able to really embody that character and become something they didn't even know they were capable of. So my call originally was an open call. So I had actors, non-actors, just general people coming in. And the cast I have with now, they are good.
Okay.
I think anybody, my philosophy is anybody can act, but it takes a good director to bring that up.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter whether you have an acting background or you don't. A good director could make you turn into or become an actor.
Okay, I would have actually never thought about that because for me, I guess in my eyes in theater, the director tells you, stand here, do this, do that, that sort of thing, but you kind of come in with these skills, but the director can also help you act better.
Yeah, you see, theater is play.
Okay.
So in theater, you're playing. So when you come, it's play. You bring to the table, and as a director, you see, in it too, there are different styles of directing. You have a director who's commanding, one who know what they want, and it have to be that way. You have directors who let you come and bring to the table what you have, and from that, we decide, okay, we keeping this, we keeping that, or we taking down that. So,
does it help if the director is an actor themselves?
I think sometimes you need to step away from being an actor a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think when you direct as an actor, sometimes your intention gets lost and you put yourself in the character. And I think that doesn't work because then you would start to see copies of the same thing on the stage and you don't want to see that. So I think the important thing for the director is to solidify your intention with what you want in the scene. And then, as Joshua was saying, a good director can help an actor be what they need to be in the scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I can get that because even when there's a director in front of a band or a group of singers, sometimes they would sing what they want to hear, but sometimes it doesn't always translate well. And then we're like, no, we need words.
Right.
Use words to explain what you mentioned, playing. And that kind of reminds me of, there was an opera singer, she was doing an interview and she was sort of giving advice. The interviewer asked, what would you tell your audience? And the advice she gave was kind of, give us room, because every single night, yes, we've rehearsed, but every single night is like kids in a sandbox. We're playing, right? I guess that's why it's called a play, right? Well, we're playing. Give us the room to play and to experiment on stage. That's something that I always wanted to know. So, like, if I forget my words, or if I forget my steps, or if I forget my notes, there's skills to recover quickly. How do you recover as an actor in certain things like that?
I will go first. When you have a script for a play, it's on you to dive into the script and deeper than surface level. So you have to see themes, reasonings, whys. What you have to ask the 5 W's: what, why, when, where, and of course how.
How.
Right? So it's on an actor to go into the script and really dive. Once you understand the context of a scene, you could perform in a scene. Lines then become, I don't want to say unimportant, but once you know the context, the scene could move. And able to progress because you know where the scene starting from and you know where it have to go, where it has to end. So, you know, once you know the context, that's the main thing. Knowing the context of your scenes and who your character really is. A lot of character work would help in that.
Would you agree?
Yeah, talking about it from an actor's perspective, that's what we do. When we get a script, you dive into it for yourself, all the whys and the hows, and you try to Well, what I do is I try to create a world for the actor and the character by themselves and then fit it into the scene, because that really helps. If you forget on the day what you have to do, context and intention, subtext, all these things helps you move the scene forward.
Yes, because I remember that makes sense, because I remember seeing an actor in probably North America or something, and they were saying, you know, when you have an actor and you don't really know the full story until everybody comes together, but when you have your script, it's like, how do they walk? How do they talk? Where do they come from? How tall are they, or how tall am I supposed to show that they are? All of those, you have to create an entire story around that character, and then once you get that, then that person can exist in the reality of what it is. Okay, cool. Now, so what does it take to put something like this together? How many actors? Are there musicians? How many rehearsals? All of those, well, countless rehearsals. But Jovanna, what does it take to put some of those things together?
Well, first and foremost, no, because it's so many elements that come together. I mean, I just want to say we have guidance from our lecturers, you know, Louis, Lalon, Brendan Mackay, all of they really help us and guide us through the process. But I think as a director, once you understand your concept and what you want to see on that stage, you translate that to your actors. We have technical crew that helps us with this. Again, you're saying the countless rehearsals, the pulling of the costumes, the creation of your set. It's all these elements that need to happen beforehand. And I think then you step into your rehearsals, truly knowing what you want to do. After those elements are set in stone.
No, before we started, you were talking about going to the hardware, finding a hardware store to get paint, and I'm just assuming. So how do you decide what? Because some people may not know, like, there's black, but then there's matte black, and then there's shiny black, and then there's glittery black, and all of those things. So then you're standing up in the middle of the hardware or the paint, so like, oh my gosh. So what did it take for yours to come together?
Well, it's a long process. It is a lot of time. A lot of the time people come to a play and they see the play and they say, oh, wow, that was a good play. But they don't know the work that led up to that. So thanks to the lecturers, as Jovanna said, we have that guidance. But you, as a director, have to know what you want as your vision as well. And you have to know the context of your piece. Because if you have a piece set in the 1980s, you're not going to have a flat screen TV on set.
Context of
timing, time of day, different things, the paint that they would have used back in those days, the colors, things like that, the color palette, all those stuff you had to pay attention to. But it is a long process.
And I guess that era will also dictate the wardrobe as well.
Yes.
The wardrobe, the hairstyles.
But as a director, I mean, in our case, we are, you know, new forum directors. We're now starting. So a lot of the work we have to do for ourselves. We can't depend on anybody to do it. It's on us. And from us doing it, then we could translate it down the line to whoever in whatever department. But a lot of the work is us. You really have to lock in and get things done.
All right. Now, so you gave a general sense. Now, let's say both of you are in final, yeah?
Yes.
All right. So this is semester one, so the year ones just came in, they experience in midterm. It's November, the semester is about to be over. All of those things, and you see, and one young budding, actor comes up to you and is like, I don't know what I'm doing. Please help. What sort of guidance, what sort of advice would you give them to be able to survive and to sort of not just survive but to thrive in the tertiary level space as well as the theatrical space?
I do have an answer to this because I think I've been very busy this last year with everything I have to do and also developing myself in my own career. But I think something I realized, and this is a bit controversial depending on you as a creative artist, but obsession will always beat talent. And I just want to say that because I think, as Joshua said earlier, the degree is a bit of survival of the fittest. You really need to get into there and know what you want from it. And that's hard for some people because you're coming in and you're not expecting to do certain things like be backstage. You might just come in and wanting to be an actor or a director. But I think DCFA gives you an all-rounded perspective and you get to choose from that. So I think it's about being open understanding what you have to do, being open as an artist, and just taking what you want from the degree and making use of it.
Okay, I'm coming back to the point that you made about the humility. Know that when you are exposed to all of these things, you're not going to be good at everything. Right? So even though, as you said, you're acting your stage, but then how good are you at making a set? How good at you are at fitting people for a wardrobe, looking at certain details? What sort of advice?
The advice I would give to that person would be, do some introspection. Go look into yourself and really think if this is what you want to do. Like I said earlier, the drive for theater is passion. And if that passion dwindles, you have to really know if this is what I want to do.
Okay.
Because to reach far in theater, you have to have that drive, that passion, that push, that force. And when I started the degree in, what was that, 2020? 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. 2020? Could I not be 2021? And I came into the degree, it wasn't what I expected. And I always knew I wanted to do theater. And at that point, I was questioning, is this what... This is not what I thought this would have been.
Yes.
And I just had to, again, trust the process.
Yeah.
Trust myself, trust the process. But easier said than done,
Yeah.
Because I really was considering, maybe psychology wouldn't be so bad. I could go and do psych, I could go and do something else. But, no, seriously, but with the guidance of those around, and just trusting myself and looking into myself and asking, is this really what I want to do? I was able to answer my own question.
You have to have that hard conversation with yourself. And I've said this on air before. Psychology is one of those things that people just go into to do something. So there are some people, they're like, you know what, I'll just, like, psychology is somebody's third choice or fourth choice without fail all of at least 90% of the time, right? But I'm glad that you did not do it and that you are in. Now, granted, there's a bit of psychology in acting because you have to get into people's minds, get into people's hearts, get into people's reality, and be able to tell that story. What are some of those sort of emotional and mental skill building things that you all do to be able to do that? Because I can't just come up to year one and say, get into the headspace of somebody that this specific situation or scenario happened to, especially if they're not going through that, right? And not everybody. How do you build that sort of empathy or to be able to put yourself into that space?
Well, firstly, you have to build a relationship with who you work with.
Okay.
You have to set. I am the kind of director. I let you know who I am before we get to working.
Okay.
So when we start to work, it's not a shock as to who I am as a director, because there's play and there's work.
Yeah.
But there's a way we could combine the two and have work and play together. But that's a very thin line in between the both of those. So firstly, you have to know your crew, your cast, whoever you're working with. You have to have that relationship. Secondly, again, back to context. You have to know the play. Sometimes you might step into a rehearsal and the energy just...
Not there.
It's not there.
Right, yeah.
And you have your rehearsal plan beforehand. So when you step in and you're met with that energy, is what am I going to do now? But you have to think on your feet. Or you have to find different acting activities that we learn different techniques from different thespians along the years to now bring it to life.
Right.
So your energy might be low, but there's a game that we play and it come back up. And with that now we're able to dive into the work.
Right. So it's almost like not a breaking of the ice in terms of we're all new into this space, breaking of the ice in terms of the energy that we all come in with, and then we do an activity and we are all able, and it kind of gets us back out, gets us back into ourselves.
What
and stuff
happens
like that.
as well, actors feed off actors' energy all the time. That's just something in the arts everybody know. People feed off of your energy.
Okay.
So not all the time it might be everybody just down low, but there's one person just not there. Mentally, they're not in the rehearsal space.
Right.
So it's a task now to get them back, because when they're not there, everybody else say, okay, I'm not going to be there either.
Right.
So one by one, you start to see people just fading out, and you know they're not there. They're there with you physically, but they're somewhere else. So it's a task to grasp them back. But once you do that, it will work out well.
It works out. Okay.
There are techniques you could use, like games, different things. Music. I use a lot of music in my rehearsals because I love soca. So
Ah, boy, vibes.
it's warm-ups. It's warm-ups in soccer. It's a lot of running. You have to be warm. And you know DCFA is cold.
Oh.
So you're staying there for 2 minutes and you're freezing.
Everywhere in we cold. Except outside.
So you're freezing, so you had to get warm. The body has to be warm, and then the mind will fall into place.
Ah, okay. Okay. And I guess that's a similar experience with you as well?
I think the activities are all part of the directing process. I know this is where me as an actor comes in with me as a director, because I know like what helps me get in the headspace, what helps me bring up my energy. And I think actors need to be very fit mentally and physically, because there's this thing where, again, Joshua was saying, actors feed off of actors' energy, but then how you as the director, what energy are you bringing to the space? The energy that the director brings to the space,
She's saying things.
it pulls out what's going to happen in the rehearsal. So I think you need to make your intentions clear. So yeah, is everything that he said?
Yeah.
It's part of the process.
You also need to be honest with yourself, as not just actors when you step into that space, because as you said, you will tell everybody, this is who I am. But I've also experienced where people say, this is who I am, and then I see something totally different. Right? So you kind of have to be honest with yourself. But as we wrap up, if we could just pull up the Festival of Plays flyer just once more for me, just so that we could get a sense. Remember, we have Friday the 22nd, Saturday the 23rd, and their plays, Historia and Play Mass, Sunday the 24th. Adults are $60 each play, I'm assuming. Students are also $40, but then you can get festival pass. I think it's $60 per day, if I'm not mistaken. You can always call the number 272. WhatsApp the number 272-3232 or email dcfa@sta.ue.edu. And I guess the festival passes to experience all of them. Y'all, that is a steal of a deal. So we have Her Story at 4 p.m. If we could pull up that flyer really quickly, directed by the Joshua Lamy-Ramsden. And then at 6 p.m. we have Play Mass, directed by Jovanna Khan. Those are really lovely flyers. Big up all the arts. Big up, big up.
Thank you.
Lovely, lovely. This is the Season of the Arts at the DCFA. Jovanna, Joshua, thank you so much for joining me. See, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. All right, we represented well. Trinidad and Tobago, we will be right back to Breakthrough. Don't go anywhere.